The air in our living room felt like it had been sucked out, leaving only the weight of silence and betrayal. I stood frozen, staring at the text messages glowing on Emily's phone, each word a dagger twisting deeper into my chest. "You deserve to feel alive again," her friend Sarah had written, urging her toward a choice that shattered our 10-year marriage in a single night. I'd always thought Emily and I were unbreakable. We'd built a life together, 2 kids, a cozy house in the suburbs, and a rhythm of love that felt like it could weather any storm. But storms don't always come from outside. Sometimes, they brew in whispered conversations and unchecked desires. That night, as I read the messages between Emily and Sarah, I learned my wife had spent the weekend with another man, someone she met through Sarah's encouragement, a man who wasn't me. The kids were asleep upstairs, their soft snores a cruel reminder of the family I thought we were. Emily sat across from me, her eyes darting to the floor, unable to meet mine. "It was a mistake, David," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Sarah said it would help me find myself again. I didn't mean for it to go this far." Her words felt hollow, like a script she'd rehearsed but didn't believe. Sarah, her best friend since college, had been the architect of this betrayal, planting seeds of doubt about our marriage, whispering that Emily deserved more. I wanted to scream, to demand why she didn't talk to me, why she let Sarah's voice drown out our vows. But my throat tightened, and all I could manage was, "Who is he?" Her silence was answer enough. She didn't want to say his name, as if that would make it less real. I grabbed my keys and left, the door slamming behind me, echoing the fracture in my heart. The next morning, I sat in a coffee shop, nursing a cold latte and replaying every moment of our marriage. Had I missed the signs? Emily had been distant for months, her laughter rarer, her touches fleeting. I thought it was the stress of parenting, the grind of life. But Sarah's influence had been there, subtle at first, girls' nights out, late-night texts, and comments about how Emily was wasting her best years. I hated Sarah for it, but I hated myself more for not seeing it sooner. I called my brother, Mark, who'd been through his own messy divorce. "You can't just let this slide, David," he said, his voice firm. "But don't do anything stupid. Figure out what you want, not just for you, but for the kids." His words stuck with me. I didn't want revenge. Not the kind that burns everything down. I wanted something deeper, something that would make Emily and Sarah face the wreckage they'd caused. That afternoon, I went home. Emily was in the kitchen, her eyes red from crying. "I'm so sorry, David," she said, reaching for me. I stepped back, not ready for her touch. "I need time," I told her. "And I need to know everything." She hesitated, then told me about Michael, a coworker she'd met at one of Sarah's parties. "It wasn't love," she insisted, "just a moment of weakness, fueled by Sarah's encouragement and too much wine. She said I deserved to feel desired." Emily admitted, her voice breaking. "I was stupid to listen. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my office, staring at old photos of us. Our wedding, the kids' first birthdays, vacations where we laughed until our sides hurt. I wanted to hate Emily, but love doesn't vanish that easily. And Sarah? She wasn't just a bystander. She'd orchestrated this, convincing Emily that cheating was some kind of liberation. I needed a plan. Not just to confront them, but to rebuild what was left of my life. By morning, I'd made a decision. I wouldn't let anger consume me, but I wouldn't let Emily and Sarah walk away unscathed either. I called a lawyer, not for divorce papers, but to understand my options. Then I texted Sarah. "We need to talk," I wrote. "All 3 of us." She didn't respond, but I knew she'd seen it. The stage was set, and I was ready to make a move neither of them would see coming. The meeting was set for a Saturday morning at a neutral spot, a quiet diner on the edge of town. I chose it because it was public enough to keep things civil but private enough for the conversation we needed to have. Emily looked like a ghost when she walked in, her hands fidgeting with the hem of her sweater. Sarah followed, her usual confidence replaced by a wary glance, like she knew she was walking into a trap. I'd spent the week preparing, not just emotionally but strategically. My lawyer had laid out the realities of divorce. Custody battles, asset splits, the toll it would take on our kids, Lily and Max. I didn't want that path, not yet. Instead, I'd been digging into Sarah's life, piecing together the puzzle of her influence. She wasn't just Emily's friend. She was a catalyst for chaos, and I needed to know why. We sat in a corner booth, the hum of the diner muffling our words. "I'm not here to yell," I started, keeping my voice steady. "I want to understand why you thought this was okay, Sarah. Why you pushed Emily to betray me." Sarah's eyes widened, caught off guard by my directness. Emily stared at her lap, her silence deafening. "It wasn't like that," Sarah said, her tone defensive. "I just wanted Emily to be happy. You guys were in a rut, David." She told me how bored she was, how she felt trapped. Her words stung, but I didn't flinch. "So you told her to sleep with someone else?" I asked, my voice low but sharp. Sarah shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't tell her to do anything. I just said she should explore what she wants." Emily finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't want to hurt you, David." Sarah made it sound like it wasn't a big deal, like it was just something people do. I looked at her, searching for the woman I married, but all I saw was regret and confusion. "It was a big deal to me," I said. "To our kids, to our life." The conversation spiraled from there. Sarah tried to deflect, painting herself as a concerned friend, but I wasn't buying it. I'd done my homework. Sarah's own marriage was crumbling. Her husband, Tom, had moved out months ago, and she'd been projecting her own discontent onto Emily. "You're not happy, so you wanted Emily to be miserable too?" I asked, leaning forward. Sarah's face flushed, but she didn't answer. I pulled out my phone and played a voicemail I'd received from Tom. "David, I heard what happened." His voice crackled through the speaker. "Sarah's been stirring up trouble for years. I'm sorry she dragged Emily into it." The color drained from Sarah's face. Emily looked at her, shocked, as if seeing her friend for the first time. "I'm not here to ruin you, Sarah," I said, my voice calm but firm. "But you need to own what you've done. And Emily, you need to decide what you want. For us, for the kids, for yourself." I stood up, leaving them both staring at the table. "I'll be at home when you're ready to talk," I told Emily. To Sarah, I said nothing. My silence was enough. Driving home, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Confronting them hadn't erased the pain, but it had given me clarity. I wasn't just fighting for my marriage. I was fighting for my family, for the life we'd built. But I knew the real battle was just beginning. Emily would have to choose, and I'd have to decide how far I was willing to go to save us. That night, Emily came home alone. She sat on the couch, her hands clasped tightly. "I told Sarah I need space from her," she said, her voice steady for the first time in days. "I know I messed up, David. I want to fix this if you'll let me." I looked at her, torn between love and mistrust. "It's not just about fixing it," I said. "It's about rebuilding. And that starts with the truth. All of it." The days that followed were a tightrope walk between hope and heartbreak. Emily and I agreed to try counseling, but trust is a fragile thing. Once broken, it doesn't just snap back into place. Every time she left the house, a part of me wondered if she was meeting Michael again, if Sarah's voice still lingered in her head. But I saw her trying, cutting off contact with Sarah, being home for the kids, and showing up to therapy with raw, painful honesty. Our therapist, Dr. Larson, was a no-nonsense woman who didn't let us hide. "You both have to face the why," she said in our first session. "Emily, why did you listen to Sarah? David, why didn't you see Emily slipping away?" Her questions cut deep, forcing us to confront truths we'd avoided. Emily admitted she'd felt invisible, buried under the weight of motherhood and routine. I admitted I'd been so focused on providing for the family that I'd stopped noticing her. Outside of therapy, I was still piecing together my plan. Confronting Sarah had been the first step, but I wanted her to face the consequences of her actions. Not just for Emily, but for everyone she'd hurt. I reached out to Tom again, and he agreed to meet me. Over beers at a quiet bar, he spilled the details of Sarah's unraveling life. "She's been unhappy for years," he said. "Pushing Emily to cheat was her way of justifying her own choices." Tom wasn't blameless. He'd had his own affairs, but he was done protecting Sarah. I realized Sarah's influence wasn't just a personal vendetta. It was a pattern. She'd meddled in other friends' lives, spreading her discontent like a virus. I didn't want revenge in the traditional sense, no public shaming or petty games. Instead, I wanted to expose her to the people she'd hurt, to let her see the ripple effect of her actions. I started reaching out to mutual friends, not to gossip, but to gather stories. Several confirmed Sarah's role in their own dramas, encouraging reckless decisions, feeding insecurities, and then stepping back to watch the chaos unfold. Meanwhile, Emily and I were navigating our own fragile truce. One night, after the kids were in bed, she sat me down. "I ended things with Michael completely," she said, her eyes searching mine for a reaction. "I blocked him. I don't want that life, David. I want us." Her words were a lifeline, but they came with a question I wasn't ready to answer. Could I forgive her? I wanted to, but the wound was still fresh, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw her with him. I threw myself into protecting our kids from the fallout. Lily, our 8-year-old, sensed something was wrong, asking why Mommy was sad all the time. Max, our 5-year-old, just wanted extra hugs. I shielded them as best I could, keeping their routine steady while Emily and I worked through our mess. But I knew they'd feel the cracks in our family eventually, and that thought kept me up at night. By the end of the week, I'd gathered enough stories about Sarah to confront her again, this time with others she'd hurt. I organized a small gathering, not a witch hunt, but a chance for people to speak their truths. I invited Tom, a couple of mutual friends, and even Michael's wife, Claire, who I'd tracked down through a colleague. Claire was devastated but not surprised. Michael had strayed before, and Sarah had been the one to introduce them at that fateful party. The gathering was set for the following weekend. I didn't tell Emily the full plan. She knew I was meeting with Sarah again, but not the extent of it. I wanted to protect her from the fallout, but I also needed her to see the kind of person Sarah really was. As the day approached, I felt a mix of dread and determination. This wasn't just about Emily's betrayal anymore. It was about breaking a cycle of hurt and rebuilding something stronger. The gathering took place in a community center room I'd rented for the evening, a neutral space with soft lighting and folding chairs arranged in a circle. It wasn't a courtroom, but it felt like one as Tom, Claire, and 2 other friends, Rachel and Ben, filed in. Sarah arrived last, her face a mask of defiance, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of fear. Emily came with me, hesitant but willing to face the truth. I told her this was about accountability, not revenge, and she trusted me enough to show up. I started by laying out the ground rules. No yelling, no accusations, just honesty. "We're here because Sarah's actions have hurt people," I said, keeping my voice steady. "This isn't about blame. It's about understanding and moving forward." Sarah crossed her arms, her lips tight, but she didn't interrupt. One by one, people spoke. Claire, her voice trembling, described how Sarah had encouraged Michael's flirtations, knowing he was married. Rachel shared how Sarah had pushed her into a toxic relationship years ago, feeding her doubts about her own worth. Ben admitted Sarah's advice had nearly cost him his job when she urged him to confront his boss recklessly. Emily listened, her face pale, as the stories painted a picture of Sarah's manipulation. When it was Tom's turn, he looked directly at Sarah. "You've been running from your own pain for years," he said, "but dragging others into it? That's not friendship. That's destruction." Sarah's facade cracked, her eyes glistening, but she stayed silent. When it was my turn, I turned to Sarah. "You told Emily our marriage was holding her back, that she deserved to feel alive. You knew what those words would do. You knew because you've done it before. I paused, letting the weight of my words settle. I'm not here to ruin you, Sarah, but you need to see the damage you've caused. Then I turned to Emily. And you need to see who you trusted over me. Emily's voice broke as she spoke. I was lost, Sarah. I trusted you, and you led me to hurt the person I love most. Tears streamed down her face, and for the first time, I saw her anger. Not just at herself, but at Sarah. Sarah tried to respond, mumbling about good intentions, but the room's collective pain drowned her out. The gathering ended quietly, with no dramatic outbursts, just a heavy silence. Sarah left first, her head bowed. Emily and I stayed behind, helping stack chairs. I didn't realize how much she was hurting everyone, Emily said softly. I should have seen it. I took her hand, the first time I'd touched her in weeks. We both missed things, I said. But we're here now. The next few days were a turning point. Emily threw herself into repairing our family, spending more time with the kids and opening up in therapy. I saw glimpses of the woman I fell in love with, but trust was still a work in progress. Meanwhile, I heard through Rachel that Sarah had started therapy herself, prompted by the confrontation. It wasn't the victory I'd expected, but it felt like a step toward healing, for all of us. I began to focus on the kids, planning a weekend trip to the zoo to bring some normalcy back. Lily's laughter as we watched the penguins felt like a bandage on my heart. But I knew the road ahead was long. Emily and I had to rebuild not just for us but for them. And I had one more move to make. Not for Sarah, but for Michael, the man who'd crossed the line with my wife. I wasn't done yet. Michael was the missing piece of the puzzle, the one I hadn't confronted yet. I'd avoided him, partly because the thought of facing the man who'd been with my wife made my stomach churn, and partly because I wasn't sure what I'd do if I saw him. But I couldn't let him slip away without accountability. He wasn't just a bystander in Sarah's scheme. He'd made a choice, knowing Emily was married, knowing she had kids. I found him through Claire, who gave me his work address. Michael was a mid-level manager at a tech firm, polished and charming, the kind of guy who thought he could talk his way out of anything. I didn't want to fight. I wanted him to understand the cost of his actions. So I arranged to meet him at a park near his office, a public place where emotions wouldn't spiral out of control. He showed up in a crisp button-down, his posture relaxed until he saw my face. David, I'm sorry, he started, but I cut him off. Don't. Just listen. I told him about Lily and Max, about the nights I'd spent wondering how to explain to them why their mom was different, why our family felt broken. I told him about the trust he'd helped shatter, not just in my marriage but in Claire's too. You didn't just hurt me, I said. You hurt kids who don't even know your name. Michael's confidence faltered, his eyes dropping to the ground. It was a mistake, he said. I didn't think it would go this far. His excuse echoed Emily's, and it made my blood boil. You didn't think because you didn't care, I shot back. But you're going to care now. I handed him a letter I'd written to his boss, detailing his behavior, not to get him fired, but to ensure his actions followed him. I haven't sent this, I said, but I will if you ever come near my family again. He took the letter, his hands shaking. I'm done with Emily, he said quickly. It's over. I nodded, walking away without another word. It wasn't about threats or vengeance. It was about making him feel the weight of his choices, just as I'd done with Sarah. Back home, Emily and I were making progress, but it was slow. Therapy helped us unpack the layers of our pain, her feelings of being unseen, my tendency to bury myself in work. We started small rituals to reconnect. Coffee together in the mornings, reading to the kids at night. One evening, as we tucked Lily in, she hugged us both and said, I'm glad you're not fighting anymore. Her words were a reminder of why we were trying. But the shadow of Sarah lingered. Emily struggled with the void her friend left. Not just the betrayal, but the loss of a friendship she'd leaned on for years. I encouraged her to reach out to other friends, ones who lifted her up instead of tearing her down. Slowly, she started rebuilding her circle, reconnecting with college friends who'd drifted away. I also took steps to protect our family's future. I met with a financial advisor to secure our savings, ensuring the kids would be okay no matter what happened. I wasn't planning for divorce, but I needed to be prepared. Emily noticed my efforts and thanked me, her voice soft but sincere. "I don't deserve you," she said one night. I didn't respond. I wasn't sure she was wrong. As weeks turned into months, I felt a shift. The anger that had burned in me was fading, replaced by a cautious hope. But I knew one final step was needed to close this chapter. Not just for me, but for Emily, for our kids, and for the life we wanted to reclaim. The final step wasn't about confrontation or punishment. It was about us. Emily and I had been patching the cracks in our marriage, but we needed something bigger, a moment to redefine who we were. I proposed a vow renewal, not the flashy kind with a big party, but a private ceremony with just us and the kids. It would be a chance to recommit, to acknowledge the pain but choose each other again. Emily was hesitant at first, worried it was too soon. "What if you can't trust me again?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. "I'm trying, David, but I know I broke something." I took her hands, feeling the familiar warmth I'd missed. "I'm not promising it'll be easy," I said, "but I'm choosing you, Emily. I need you to choose me too." We planned it for a quiet Sunday in our backyard, under the oak tree where we'd carved our initials years ago. Lily and Max helped decorate, stringing fairy lights and picking wildflowers. It was simple, imperfect, and ours. We wrote new vows, ones that didn't shy away from the truth. Mine promised to listen more, to see her even in the chaos of life. Hers promised honesty, even when it hurt, and to protect our family above all else. The day came, and as we stood under the tree, the kids giggling at our sides, I felt a weight lift. Emily's eyes shone with tears as she spoke her vows, her voice steady despite the emotion. "I lost my way, David, but you're my home," she said. "I'll spend every day proving that." When it was my turn, I choked up, promising to fight for us no matter what. Lily and Max clapped, not fully understanding but feeling the love in the air. Afterward, we ate cupcakes and danced to old songs, the kids twirling between us. For the first time in months, I saw Emily's real smile, the one that reached her eyes. It wasn't a fix, not completely, but it was a beginning. We were choosing to rebuild, not because it was easy, but because it was worth it. Sarah's shadow still lingered in small ways. Mutual friends told us she'd moved to another city, starting fresh after the confrontation. I didn't care where she was, as long as she was out of our lives. Michael, too, had faded into the background. Claire had left him, and he'd taken a job transfer out of state. Their absence gave us space to heal. The kids became our anchor. Lily started drawing pictures of our family again, the four of us smiling under a bright sun. Max asked fewer questions about why we seemed sad. We kept up with therapy, not just for the big moments but for the small ones, learning to talk without fear, to love without conditions. One night, as we sat on the porch watching the stars, Emily rested her head on my shoulder. "Do you think we'll make it?" she asked. I thought about the pain, the work, the love that still burned despite it all. "We're making it now," I said, squeezing her hand. And for the first time, I believed it. But life doesn't tie up neatly. There were still hard days, moments when doubt crept in. I knew the final piece of our healing would come from within, not from grand gestures, but from the quiet, daily choice to stay. And I had one last move, not for Sarah or Michael, but for us, to ensure our family's future was built on something stronger than before. The last move wasn't a single moment but a commitment to the long haul. Emily and I had rebuilt enough to see a future, but we needed to protect it, not just from outside influences like Sarah, but from our own flaws. We started a tradition. Every Sunday, we'd sit down with the kids and talk about our week, our dreams, our fears. It was our way of staying connected, of making sure no one felt invisible again. We also made practical changes. I cut back on work hours, prioritizing family dinners over late meetings. Emily enrolled in an art class, something she'd loved in college but abandoned for motherhood. It wasn't just about rediscovering herself. It was about building a life where she didn't need someone like Sarah to fill the gaps. The kids noticed the difference. Lily's chatter filled the house again, and Max's hugs grew less clingy. Therapy became less about the affair and more about who we wanted to be. Dr. Larson pushed us to dream bigger, to imagine a marriage that wasn't just repaired but stronger. We started planning a family trip, not to escape but to celebrate. We chose a cabin in the mountains, a place where we could hike, laugh, and make new memories. The kids were thrilled, already planning campfire stories. One evening, as we packed for the trip, Emily found an old photo album in the attic. Pictures from our early days, when love felt effortless. We sat on the floor, flipping through it, laughing at our bad haircuts and cheesy poses. But there was a moment when our eyes met, and the weight of everything we'd been through settled between us. "I almost lost this," she whispered. I pulled her close. "We didn't lose it," I said. "We fought for it." The trip was everything we needed. Under a starlit sky, we roasted marshmallows, the kids' laughter echoing through the trees. Emily and I held hands, not out of habit but out of choice. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments when I'd catch myself wondering if I could fully trust her, or when she'd tense up, worried I'd pull away. But those moments were fewer, overshadowed by the life we were building. Back home, we kept the momentum. We joined a community group for couples, not just to work on our marriage but to support others. Sharing our story carefully without the raw details helped us heal. Other couples opened up about their own struggles, and we realized we weren't alone. The shame that had once consumed us faded, replaced by a quiet strength. Years later, I'd look back on this time as the moment we redefined our family. Sarah's influence, Michael's betrayal, Emily's mistake. They were scars, not wounds anymore. We didn't pretend they hadn't happened, but we didn't let them define us. Lily and Max grew up knowing their parents loved them fiercely, and that love extended to each other. The final lesson wasn't about revenge or even forgiveness. It was about resilience. Emily and I learned that love isn't a feeling that carries you. It's a choice you make every day, especially when it's hard. My move wasn't a single act of confrontation or a grand gesture. It was the decision to stay, to rebuild, to choose us over the pain. And in the end, that choice left Emily and me stronger, not destroyed, ready to face whatever came next, together.